In 1966, the United States Army issued a new rifle to its soldiers in Vietnam. They told those soldiers the rifle was self-cleaning. It was not. They told them the rifle was the most advanced infantry weapon in the world. It was jamming in combat and getting men killed. And the people who knew about the problem did nothing, because fixing it would have cost money, and admitting the problem would have cost careers. This is the real story of the M16, and it is not a story about a rifle. The AK-47 was designed by Mikhail Kalashnikov in 1947. The story goes that Kalashnikov, a wounded Soviet tank commander recovering in a hospital during World War II, decided to design a rifle that any soldier could use, any soldier could maintain, and that would keep working no matter what you did to it. Whether that story is exactly true or not, the rifle he produced was exactly that. The AK-47 had approximately 8 moving parts. It could be disassembled and reassembled by a soldier in complete darkness in under a minute. It could be buried in mud, submerged in water, dropped from a vehicle, left in the desert for months, and it would still fire. Soviet forces began fielding it in the early 1950s. By the time American soldiers arrived in Vietnam in large numbers in 1965, the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army were carrying AK-47s in the hundreds of thousands. American soldiers who encountered it in combat noticed something immediately. The AK-47 never seemed to stop working. The American rifle that preceded the M16 was the M14. It was a heavy, accurate, powerful weapon designed for the open battlefields of Europe that military planners had expected the next war to be fought on. Vietnam was not open European battlefields. Vietnam was dense jungle, close-range ambushes, engagements at distances of 20 meters or less, where accuracy at 500 meters meant nothing. The M14 was also heavy. A soldier carrying the M14 with combat load could carry far less ammunition than a soldier carrying the lighter AK-47. In firefight after firefight, American soldiers found themselves outgunned. Not because the AK-47 was more accurate at range, it was not, but because in the jungle the fight was close, fast, and brutal, and the enemy was carrying a weapon that weighed less, fired more rounds, and never jammed. American soldiers started picking up AK-47s from dead enemy fighters and carrying them instead of their issued weapons. That is how bad the situation was. Eugene Stoner had designed a rifle in the late 1950s that solved almost every problem the M14 had. It was lightweight. It fired a smaller, faster round that tumbled on impact and created devastating wound channels. It had a higher rate of fire. Soldiers could carry 3 times as much ammunition for the same weight. In jungle combat at close range, it was devastatingly effective. The rifle was called the AR-15. The Air Force adopted it. Special Forces units that tested it in Vietnam sent back reports that were almost uniformly enthusiastic. In early testing in Vietnam, the AR-15 was described as producing one-shot kills at ranges where the M14 required multiple rounds. The Army's leadership did not want it, not because it was not effective, but because the Army had already invested heavily in the M14 and its supporting infrastructure. Adopting a new rifle meant admitting the M14 had been a mistake. It meant retraining. It meant new supply chains. It meant careers built on the M14 program were suddenly less valuable. So, the Army's Ordnance Corps began a campaign to make the AR-15 fail. What happened next was one of the most consequential decisions in the history of American military procurement. The Army agreed to adopt a version of the AR-15, redesignated the M16. But before issuing it to soldiers, the Ordnance Corps made changes to the rifle that Eugene Stoner had never approved and explicitly warned against. They changed the powder used in the ammunition. Stoner's original design had used ball powder that burned cleanly and kept the rifle's gas system from fouling. The Ordnance Corps switched to a different powder that was cheaper and that they already had in large supply. This powder left significantly more residue in the rifle's mechanism. They also removed the chrome lining from the rifle's chamber and bore. Chrome lining prevented corrosion and made cleaning easier. Removing it saved money. Then they told soldiers the rifle was self-cleaning and did not need to be cleaned in the field. A rifle with a fouling-prone gas system, an unchromed chamber susceptible to corrosion, firing in the humidity and dirt of Vietnamese jungle that soldiers had been told did not need cleaning. Men died because of these decisions. The reports started coming in almost immediately after the M16 was issued in large numbers in 1966 and 1967. Rifles jamming after firing only a few rounds. Soldiers found dead with their M16 field stripped beside them, a cleaning rod inserted into the barrel, having died trying to clear a jam while under fire. A letter written by a Marine in Vietnam in 1967 described finding 17 Marines dead in a trench with their rifles jammed. The letter was read into the congressional record. Congress launched an investigation. The investigation found exactly what Stoner and others had been warning about. The ammunition powder change had dramatically increased the rate of fouling. The lack of chrome lining made the problem worse in Vietnam's humid conditions. The self-cleaning claim had been a deliberate lie told to reduce the demand for cleaning equipment, which the military had failed to provide in adequate quantities anyway. The Ordnance Corps officers responsible for the changes faced no serious consequences. The soldiers who died clearing jams in the jungle did not have that option. The Army fixed the M16, eventually. Chrome lining was restored. The ammunition was changed back to ball powder. Cleaning kits were issued with every rifle. Soldiers were trained to clean their weapons constantly in field conditions. The improved version, the M16A1, became a reliable and effective combat rifle. It served American forces for decades. Later variants serve today. But the window between the original flawed issue and the corrections cost lives that did not need to be lost. Historians and veterans who have studied the records believe the number runs into the hundreds. Some believe it is higher. The exact number will never be known because the military did not track rifle malfunctions as a cause of death in the way it tracked wounds from enemy fire. Now, back to the comparison that started this story. The AK-47 versus the M16 debate has been running since the 1960s. Gun enthusiasts, veterans, and military historians have argued about it ever since. Here is what the evidence actually shows. The AK-47 is more reliable in adverse conditions: mud, sand, water, neglect. If you need a rifle that will fire no matter what, the AK-47 is the standard everything else is measured against. This was true in 1966, and it is still true today. The M16 and its descendants are more accurate at range. The cartridge is more precisely engineered. The ergonomics are better for trained soldiers. Modern variants of the M16 platform are among the most accurate and capable service rifles ever fielded. In the specific conditions of Vietnam jungle combat, the AK-47's advantages mattered more than the M16's advantages. Close range, high humidity, limited maintenance opportunity. These conditions favored the AK-47's design philosophy of simple and indestructible over the M16's design philosophy of light and precise. In different conditions, the calculus changes. This is why the debate never ends. Both rifles were right for different wars. What does not change is what happened in 1966 and 67. American soldiers were issued a rifle that had been deliberately modified away from its designer's specifications by people who put procurement politics above the lives of the men who would carry it. They were told the rifle did not need cleaning when it desperately did. They were sent into combat without adequate cleaning equipment, and men died clearing jams that should never have existed. The AK-47 did not beat the M16 in Vietnam. Bureaucracy beat the M16 in Vietnam. And the men who paid for that decision are buried in cemeteries across America. Their rifles have been fixed for 50 years. Nobody ever fixed the system that broke them.
The M16 got fixed in 1968. The bureaucracy that broke it is still running today. Same system, different decisions. If you want to know where else that system failed, subscribe to The Next Story is already waiting.